coaches can fall into victim mentality very easily because it can be very much like, oh, my client didn't stick to the diet, or they didn't do this, they didn't do that. And you start falling into a victim mode of like people saying, I need better clients.
When a client first shows a little bit of hesitation, I think a lot of coaches will be like, oh, no, that's okay, let's pull back.
You need to push yourself to your extreme because you're going to take someone else to their extreme.
It's our responsibility to accept nothing but the best from our members or clients, and it's not shifting the blame.
If what you're saying is so amazing, what you're selling to people is so amazing, why wouldn't you want to do it?
We're taking average people with average genetics and pushing them to do things they never thought were possible.
Walking the walk is much more than just, oh, well, look, I got abs once, therefore I can help you.
Okay, so every time we put an advert out for recruiting trainers and coaches, there's always three key tenets that we look for. It's effectively walking the walk, displaying evidence that you've been through the journey yourself at all different ends of the spectrum. It's always showing that willingness to learn. And the third thing is caring more about the result than the client themselves. And that's really having that deep buy-in into wanting someone to transform. Ed, in all your years of recruitment now, how have you found those three things to play out in the real world?
I think if you can get all three, you've got the golden unicorn or whatever it is. But it's very rare to have all three. I think the two that normally come together is the really caring and then also the growth mindset. Because if you do really care, one, about your clients or members, about the company, but also about yourself, then you're willing to do whatever it takes to give the best service, to keep growing. And so that growth mindset is almost like comes along with that. I think what was then hard to bring that together with, and if you get someone with those two as well as the walking the walk, is where the real magic happens. And the walking the walk is actually the hard bit, because as much as wanting to help people, loads of people out there want to help people. Likewise, loads of people like the idea of learning more and getting better at what they do. But combining that with actually putting it into action yourself is very different. There's a saying that I don't know who said this, I can't give them credit, but it's basically, would you ever go to a virgin sex therapist? And that's how I kind of think of this in the same way. Why would you ever go to a transformation coach who hasn't been there or done anything themselves?
That's definitely you.
Yeah, I was trying to think earlier who said that, because I was like, that's going to be a perfect line for it. But so I can't give them the credit. It definitely wasn't me. But with coaching, we've got to remember that we're not scientists. We take science and we implement it into the real world. That's what coach is. We're the bridge between science and the real world. And so unless you know how to implement it into the real world, you are just a scientist. And then, that's fine. Go work in a lab, do that stuff. But, you're not actually going to be working with people and changing lives in the real world. And when you think of so much of what actually is important as a coach, it comes down to, beyond just giving that initial plan, which we know is a very small part of the process. It comes down to having empathy, guiding them through a journey, adding accountability. All of these things you can only do if you're actually living it. By empathy, you're putting yourself in their shoes. How can you put yourself in their shoes if you've never done what's being asked of them? Accountability. How can you hold someone accountable to something that you're not doing or you've never done yourself? That's a recipe for setting yourself up with imposter syndrome. Likewise, guiding them through a journey. You're being a tour guide to a place you've never been before. Like, you can't guide them through it without having visited that place. So all of these things, it's like you can't get that from a book. You have to be living these things.
Yeah, it's like the dentist with bad teeth. That's another one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a kind of thing of, but maybe my clients don't go to photo shoot, or I don't want to push people. That's all fine. But what's important in this context of body transformation is that you're pushing to your version of extreme. And so for someone who's relatively young, so if you're in your 20s, your 30s, you've been fit all your life, you enjoy training, you enjoy eating well, your version of extreme is going to be a lot more extreme than a lot of your clients if you're working with the same kind of clientele that we are. So, for example, you getting into 5% body fat, just pulling numbers out, might be the same as your middle-aged client with 2 kids and a really busy job getting to 10% body fat, or whatever it is, because it's your version of extreme. And that's where it's like, you don't need to, I'm not saying you have to be Mr. Olympia, but you need to push yourself to your extreme, because you're going to take someone else to their extreme. Those two will look very different, but that doesn't mean that you should settle for as good as what their extreme is. It doesn't mean that sometimes clients won't get the same, or potentially, get into better condition than you. but it's you knowing how to push to your extreme.
And
I think for me, just continue, I'll finish this little rant now. Is that ultimately, if you believe in what you're selling, you'll do it. Because if what you're saying is so amazing, what you're selling to people is so amazing, why wouldn't you want to do it? If that dentist is selling you the best toothbrush, the best toothpaste, the best way to clean the teeth, why wouldn't they just be doing it on their teeth if it was so good? And it's like what we're giving people and advising people and pushing people towards is so amazing. Why would I not want to have that as part of my life? And also, why would I not want to be in a team with other people who have that? Like, we want to grow the RNT as much as possible. Why wouldn't we not want everyone just to be functioning at their best and just be absolutely killing it?
There's a man who's done a lot of recruitment recently.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to clarify there's three extremes in our area of body composition. There's extremes of fat loss, extremes of muscle building, and extremes of a lifestyle solution. And I think you need to have evidence of going to the extremes in all of them. The priority is obviously the fat loss first, and then evidence of being able to stay in shape, and then evidence of being able to build muscle. Because then when you've gone to the extreme of all three of those areas, you can empathize along the entire spectrum. Like you mentioned, the middle-aged woman may only want to get to 10%. You've been to 6%, so you can empathize along the whole way. If someone wants to do an aggressive building phase, if you've never embraced the fluff and felt what it feels like to feel untrained, be called untrained, have the digestion issues or whatever that may feel, of like forcing food down and continuing to train hard, hit PRs, etc. If you've not done that, how are you going to push someone else to do that before saying, oh, you should do a mini cut? So you need to go to the extremes of that, and then also the extremes of learning how to stay in shape year round without always dieting and effectively living your life. Because especially for our niche, most people probably don't care about anything else but that of getting in shape and then effectively staying in shape so they don't have to diet again.
In my opinion, I know we've got 3 points there, but I would say always be learning and walk the walk are the same thing. I don't think you can learn anything that we do in a book. You can listen to all our podcasts, you can read all our case studies, you can understand consolidation and all this stuff. But until you yourself have lived it and you've experienced it as a coach, have you experienced taking yourself to the extreme from a fat loss perspective and then consolidating properly, not binging, not, reverting back to bad habits? If you yourself have not done that, and how are you meant to coach other people who are also going through that phase? You simply cannot. You cannot understand what they are going through. Or if you're someone who themselves has these food issues, okay, and there's nothing wrong with having these food issues if you yourself are working on them, but how are you meant to help other people if you yourself have not fixed these things in yourself, right? So walking the walk is far more than just, oh, have you got abs once? Like, that's not walking the walk. Walking the walk is, taking yourself to the extreme in all parts of body transformation, which go far beyond just the initial diet. It's like, do you have evidence of you maintaining your results over the long term? Do you have evidence of yourself chasing other performance goals that allow you to stay in shape forever? Have you got evidence of you improving your own relationship with food, et cetera, et cetera? So walking the walk is much more than just, oh, well, look, I got abs once, therefore I can help you, because we're not looking for those type of coaches as well.
So when you marry those three things up, you then have, we've kind of listed like 9 things earlier today. They're not an exhaustive list, and we may or not get through all of them today. But there's effectively like 9 parts of that can make up a world-class coach in this sort of body transformation arena. And I think the first thing is to acknowledge the fact that we're taking average people with average genetics and pushing them to do things they never thought were possible. We've seen enough different scenarios, different backgrounds to know that everyone can transform and anyone can transform so long as they're willing to do it. You've obviously got to want to do it, but so long as that mindset's in place, being able to push someone way beyond they thought was possible, and taking someone you look at it before and think they'd never get to that after, and actually taking them to that after. I think having that belief firstly comes from the 3 keys that we just mentioned, but being able to actually do that is the next thing. And you've got to start by, like Ed said, believing in the product and the service and the power of what we do, more than anyone and more than the person going through it.
Yeah, completely agree. One of my favorite questions in the recruitment process is asking, looking at your current results you're getting with clients at the moment, what do you feel like is the limiting factor? What needs to change in order to take them to the next level? As soon as someone says, my clients, I'm basically just switched off.
Really? So what they say, their clients are the reason they can't get better results?
Yeah, I need better clients to get better results. Everyone has different goals. And so it's not saying it's completely wrong, not better clients, but some clients don't want to push as far as others. That's totally understandable. But whoever's listening to this, myself included, if you think your clients are the limiting factor, I think you've already just shown that you probably haven't got that growth mindset that we're looking for. Because the more that you can look in the mirror and look back at yourself as to what's holding things back, because as you said there, we're taking average people with average genetics and then doing things that not only they don't think is possible, but most of the population don't think is possible.
This ties into what we're saying. If you've never walked the walk, you're not going to believe that you can do it with other people as well, right? You're not going to believe that you have the ability to transform others, And, we've got piles of evidence showing that it definitely can be done. And yeah, everyone can transform because everyone can lose body fat. Regardless of how much muscle you have. Yeah, muscle mass can take a long time to build. Some people will look, really good when they transform, et cetera, but everyone can still make significant changes to not only their physique, but everything else that goes with that transformation, which I think a lot of people miss out on. Yeah, the physical change is great, but when we say transform, we mean transform in all areas of your life.
Yeah.
So everyone can definitely do that.
With the physical element, there's a standard of fat loss or weight loss that you want to accomplish on a week-to-week basis to make sure that standards are being held across life. Maybe we touch on what that standard is, why those standards aren't met, and what the gap is in there.
I think the exact numbers here are not set in stone, and different contexts is going to account for different things. But as a rough rule, as a general guideline, during the fat loss phase, I think 1% of body weight loss per week. So 1% of body weight, not 1 kilo, but 1% of what your body weight is per week. For most people is a great target to shoot for. Could definitely go faster than that. And especially the more body fat you've got, the faster you can potentially go. But we don't want to take that to such an extreme that it ends up just being really unsustainable. Now, we know fat loss phases aren't sustainable for lifetime because otherwise you would start starvation. But we want to make sure it's sustainable for long enough to actually achieve your goal. Likewise, want to make sure there's not massive nutrient deficiencies and stuff, and also potentially, negatively impacts in relation with food. But on the other end of the spectrum, you don't want to go so slowly that you're just dragging it out for so long, because I think, as we mentioned on the other podcast recently, was around, once you start fat loss phase, like that clock starts and you're in diet mode and there is fatigue building up, regardless of the rate of loss that you're going for. So I definitely wouldn't be going for anything less than 0.5% per week in all scenarios I can think of off the top of my head right now. But the main thing I'd say is once you agree a rate of loss as a coach in your head, but also then agree with your client, it's then holding everyone accountable to that. If something happens 1 week and that doesn't actually materialize, it's not the end of the world by any means. Maybe there's a slip up, maybe it's an agreed thing, whatever it is. However, if it's just a case that everything's been going along all fine, you're aiming for that 1% and you have the client hasn't dropped that 1%, you need to look at two things. Either the plan isn't set up correctly, it's not the end of the world, you just make a change, and or adherence hasn't been good enough, in which case you as a coach then need to hold that client accountable, not just to telling off, but manage their expectations and then also look to fix that issue. That could be both things, could be one or the other, but basically if a client isn't dropping at the rate you want, as a coach, it's either your plan's wrong or their adherence is wrong. It's not the end of the world, but it's your job to then fix one or both of those things.
Yeah, and that kind of points
and just blaming it on this.
So maybe there's
okay, go.
Maybe they're like this will tie nicely on there. Like number 3 is it's our responsibility to accept nothing but the best from our members or clients, and it's not shifting the blame. So maybe you want to talk about the victim mentality of coaches. I think coaches can fall into victim mentality very easily because it can be very much like, oh, my client didn't stick to the diet, or they didn't do this, they didn't do that, and you start falling into a victim mode of basically what Ed said earlier, of like people saying, I need better clients.
Yeah. Or not even victim mode, just being like, well, it's their fault. They can't stick to the plan. See you later. It's like, no. That it is our responsibility to accept nothing less, but it's also our responsibility to give them the best opportunity to adhere to their diet, to adhere to their plans. And that's where it's, can we, I always say you can't make was it you can't lead a horse to water, or you can't make it drink, or something like that.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah, yeah. But we can make that horse really, really thirsty by, again, improving adherence or improving ways to help the client adhere to their diet. Just saying you didn't stick to your diet, see you next week. No, that's not coaching. That, again, is shifting blame and responsibility. Okay. You should always be doing what you can on your end to help the client improve their adherence. Okay. So that is what we mean when we say we accept responsibility and we expect nothing less. And yeah, we have to want it more than them, because fundamentally they don't know what they can do. Simple as that. They don't know what is possible. And that is why, as coaches, we need to want that goal more than them, because we know what can be done when they really dedicate themselves.
Just to tag on to that, sorry, I know we've got a few points here, but I was going to, one of the biggest game changers in my career as a coach was one time, I don't know if I said that or something along the lines of, like they just wouldn't do it. But another coach said to me, there's another coach out there who would have got that result with that client. And that was like a light bulb switch to my head. And that's how I now try and approach any client situation of, like, there's a coach out there who would get transformation with this client, or there's a coach out there who would do X with this client. Like, it's not the client here. What are they doing differently to what you're doing differently? Because, and then it's not, sometimes the client just isn't willing to do what's required to achieve that goal. And then it's a case of expectation management. But if you can just look at yourself before looking at them, for me, that was an absolute game changer and leveled me up to
that's a big one.
Yeah, like crazy. Yeah.
You have to assume the all-in mindset is there. But I think what you're talking about there, especially, is like most people can get people to like okay shape. We always talk about, we have the internal grading. I don't like the word of grading system, but there's an okay change and then there's a world-class change in someone. And I think someone can get to an okay change. Pretty much anyone can get to an okay change, but getting to like world-class change is the difference in everything else we're discussing here of showing what is possible. Because when you know what is possible, and then also I think you have to link it to things which are not just about the body fat and the body weight, because when you link it to what's possible personally and professionally in your growth, then it becomes more exciting to want to go to the next level. Otherwise, it's very easy to accept, oh yeah, I'm healthier than I've ever been before. I'm lighter than I've been in 10 years. I feel good. My clothes are fitting well. But unless you know there's another layer, then it's like, oh wow, okay. And that's the coach's responsibility, to show them that the nirvana they don't yet know about.
Yeah, show them what is possible and what can be done, for sure. It's massive. And I think most coaches would be happy with an okay change. Look at this okay change. And then you'll see in the caption that all this stuff can't be proven. Healthy food, relationship with food is so much better. I feel more positive in my day to day. Like, come on, no. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, Chani sometimes shows me before and afters, right? So she never got this. She never understood like between the difference between okay and world class. Then once he got into the fitness industry, I started showing her these pictures. And before she was like, I don't really know what I'm looking for. Now she's like, I can't tell the difference between the before and after here. Like, am I looking at it wrong? I'm like, yeah, you're not looking at it wrong. That's the standard out there. We wouldn't accept anything less than like what we put out there. So, and that kind of comes back to the next point, which is knowing when to push and when to pull. So, Ivan, when should you push, and then when should you pull?
I think when a client has a lot of momentum going and they're absolutely smashing it and everything is just coming along really well, it's the obvious choice is to keep pushing, right? But I think where a lot of other people may get mixed up is when a client first shows a little bit of hesitation. I think a lot of coaches will be like, oh, no, that's okay. Let's pull back. Yeah, no, this is too far. You're going to ruin your relationship with food. And yeah, you can't do this. Your metabolism's broken. Let's just reverse it. And I think this is when the coach needs to not double down, but just let the client know, hey, we can work through this. And what that nirvana on the other end is literally within grasp. You are there. We just have to come up with some solutions to keep you moving in the right direction. So it's not about pulling back there. It's more about, can we solve this current problem? And can I excite the client enough to want to keep going? Because they can see that the benefits are going to outweigh the potential temporary cons, So I'm always going to try to communicate why we should keep going and why what's preventing them isn't a real barrier. It's just something that they've put in their mind. I would always go down that route first if possible. And if that still is just like, no, whatever, then maybe potentially we'll potentially pull things back and go, okay, cool, let's change courses for now. But it's always going to be my last resort.
I think that comes from hyping them. You got to hype the person up before that hesitation even kicks in. So the hesitation shouldn't even be like on the cards, really. And if it is, it's probably either a lack of journey map or a lack of hype or an excitement, because they're just sort of dragging their heels through something which is hard, and they don't really know what's possible on the other side. So they have to be shown the journey.
They don't know why it's hard.
Yeah. They just think, oh, this is too hard. Let me just stop now.
I think it also just then ties into the next one around, like, don't be afraid to dig deep, which is when it is time to push. If you need to push hard, you then have to push hard. And I think having pushed hard yourself, you then know what some of the things they're going to experience. And so then some of the things that potentially crop up that they may then start to hesitate on, you can just know, you can speak very calmly. I was communicating with a woman earlier this morning whose scale weight started to basically hold this week. She smashed the plan, but basically digged into it a little bit more. Bowel movement frequency has just slowed down a little bit. That's totally expected. And I basically went back to her and was like, look, she was a little bit worried about it, a bit frustrated. I could go back to her and just say, look, I'm not concerned at all right now. You're nailing this. This makes complete sense. You're just not, you're not having as many bowel movements. Even if body fat's coming off, it's basically like still feces or whatever, like still in you that's not been removed. So your scale weight's going to be impacted. I can then also relate it back to myself because I've experienced that as well. And so it's like panic averted. There's no reason to be upset or be worried. It's like, okay, actually, no, he's been here. He's done this. That's all cool. I'll just keep sticking to the plan. If I hadn't walked that walk, I'd be like, whoa, wait a second. Her weight isn't moving. She must be lying about adherence, or oh my god, maybe energy balance is all wrong. Maybe I need to change her meal time. She's eating carbs after 5 o'clock. That must be the issue. It's like I've been there. I'm not. So there's no need to panic. So I think that's another big part of.
It's like in the internal summer stroke that we're running with some of our members. There was some conversation yesterday around like the grind and like how it's meant to feel, and like how do you push through the days where your legs are like lead, and I was like, and someone else was asking like, when does that switch happen? I was like, it's going to go from 0 to 100. It's not an organic increasing in fatigue. You just wake up one day like, oh wow, now the games have begun, and you just got to push through these next few weeks where your legs are going to feel like lead. You're going to dragging yourself through the day, and you look back on the other side and wonder how you even did it. But something will keep pushing you forward every single day because there's this internal momentum that you've got that you're capitalizing on, but it needs that objective. Yes, it's okay. You're feeling like this, to give the confidence for the person to be able to go through it, and that only comes from, like you said, personal experience.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that it is temporary. This is not something that we encourage someone to do for an entire year. Right? We're all about, orchestrated suffering. We're all about inflicting. We don't want to be inflicting more pain than is necessary. Again, we don't do that as well. So it's about getting that person. That grind phase can literally last 2, 3, maximum 4 weeks. You know what I mean? And then, you'll be very, very surprised at what can happen by the end of that. But again, if you yourself have not experienced that, and you have a client telling you, "Hey, this is happening. I feel this. I feel that." Your natural inclination, especially if you're empathetic, is going to be like, okay, let's pull you out. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
When in fact, that's when you need to coach them through that. Be like, hey, no, trust us. It's okay. You're going to look back on this one day and go, wow, that is the most impactful thing I've done in my life ever.
And two ways to do this is point 6 is use their why. And apologies for going quite quick here because I want to get through all these points. Point 6 is using their why to drive this momentum phase. But then that kind of links to point 7, which is if you create enough momentum internally and create enough excitement and confidence, you will get people want to run through a wall to get results. And that's when the hardest thing the thing you've got to do is pull them back. You've almost got to say, you don't need to do 30,000 steps. You're okay doing 15, or you don't need to drop your calories to 800. You can keep it where they are. But when you've got someone who wants to do that, that's a better thing than having to push people. But that only comes from the momentum and that willingness to like run through a wall. When you've got someone who wants to do that, it's really exciting. And that's where you almost don't need to hype, because the hype is like just built in into the whole journey.
It also links to point 8, where we're thinking, can you go the extra mile? Like if you're willing to run through a wall and it's not your transformation, they're going to run through that wall with you. Like, it's if you show them, I'm willing to run through this wall for your transformation, what more do you need from me? Of course, it's like, well, it's my transformation. I'm going to run through that wall as well. I'll carry on with them. And that's where like you care and linking back to actually caring about it, and doing whatever you can to help them get that result. It's not all in the coach's hands by any means, but as long as you know as a coach you're doing everything you can, they know that, and then they're going to want to do everything they can as well.
It circles back nicely to something you brought up earlier, which is actually number 9. And for coaches listening to this, one question to ask yourself is, what's the biggest limiting factor in stopping you achieving more transformations or better transformations? And one of them may be, walking the walk. One of them may be a lack of learning. One of them may be not caring enough. But one thing you can do is experience coaching yourself. I'm a big believer in coaching in many aspects of my life. I think coaching is super powerful. Because it gives you an objective eye, gives you accountability. You learn to be a client, which I think is another underrated factor. And ultimately, if you don't believe in coaching, why would other people believe in coaching? So that's something for the trainers listening who can do. And for other trainers who may be thinking, I want to be a part of a team that values the physical transformation as much as this, and wants to help people use the physical as a vehicle. Ed, how do people go through the application process and submit whatever they need to submit?
So if you are interested in working as part of the RNT coaching team, you can go online. You'll be able to access links through our socials, but otherwise you can go search online. It's currently being advertised on Indeed. RNT Fitness Online Transformation Coach. You'll be able to find it very easily. The basics things we're really looking for are, in terms of the qualities, as we've mentioned before, having that growth mindset, really, really caring, but also people who walk the walk. Go onto the advert, you'll see how to apply, what we need from you to get the ball rolling. But really looking forward to seeing and talking to some great people, and ultimately the next RNT coaches.
What are the top 3 mistakes people make when they apply?
Top 3, I think, comes down. Oh, that's got me on the spot here. I think number 1.
What do you, when you see it and you're like, nah?
Okay, on number 1, straight off the bat, is if a big part of the application process, as well as your CV and things, we ask for photos, which is a proof of walking the walk of your best physical condition. If you're not walking the walk, then it goes straight in the bin, I'll be honest with you. The next one is then having I'm trying to go through the phases of the application, is really a growth mindset. I'm not expecting anyone to be perfect. I'm not perfect. And I'll try and pick holes in things that don't even have holes in. The biggest thing, I'm just looking at how you react more than anything. How can you take on that feedback? How can you take being probed and potentially not being viewed as the all-knowing person, as you may have been up to this point as a coach? And then the other thing is just basic professionalism. Like this is an obvious one, but a scary one. I think that the fact of how infrequent it is, but ultimately what we're doing is a profession. Turn up to things on time, speak professionally, respond to things on time, hit deadlines. Grammar, just basic things, like
grammar.
Look presentable. Don't turn up on a Zoom call interview looking like you've been dragged for a hedge, haven't slept in a week, and in a busy Starbucks in the middle of central London. Take it seriously, because as much as this is, working from home on a laptop, this is a professional job you're going for. And as we say in the application, we're not really advertising a job; it's a career. This isn't your part-time thing that you're going to do for a few months at Pure Gym, then you move on to the next local gym. This is a career. It's got a career pathway. Could be the start of something completely new. I was very aware of that when I joined RNT. I went so all in on it because I was like, you know what, this is my chance to go somewhere in the fitness industry. And it's exactly the same for whoever's listening to this now.
Well, we'll put in the show notes the link to apply, but we'll also put in the show notes the podcast with Ivan discussing his journey with us, podcast with Ed discussing his journey, because I think it could be a useful experience to listen to. My favorite interview question that I heard Ed on, it was me, Ed, and maybe Ivan was on there as well, and the interviewee, and Ed asked him, so you put 10 to 13 reps? What's the rationale behind this?
16.
Was it 10 to 16 or something like that? 16. The guy went on for about 10 minutes explaining his rep ranges, and I don't think that answer even mattered. But it was just funny seeing someone respond to that question.
Whatever you write, here's a top tip for me before we go. Whatever you write, make sure you know why, because I'm just going to ask why.
If you're not a trainer listening to this and you want to know what to look for in a transformation company, there's two things that you do need to always pay attention to. One is results, and probably results in people similar to yourself. And second is look at the quality of the education that they're putting out. There's a reason why we always aim to create education better than free education better than people's paid education. It's because we want you to have all the tools you need to transform. So look at the results, look at the education, and that can help you make a good informed decision. I think that's everything. That's the 9 points. We'll put all the links in the show notes, and look forward to welcoming the next RNT coach.